All right, so I would like to welcome everyone. My name is Thiago. I'm the customer success manager here at TagoIO. We're gonna be we're gonna be going through the webinar today, building script to scale up IoT applications. This is gonna be part one. We're gonna record this session and be providing the link for it to you guys later. In this first session, we're going to introduce the concepts and use to create scripts using analysis to demonstrate how to build a complete solution able to manage end user signed up dashboard and device allocations. And we're going to be, Vitor is going to be presenting it. Just a reminder to you guys, feel free to present yourselves here in the chat. We're going to be having a Q&A in the end of this webinar for questions. And I'm going to leave it to you, Vitor. Thanks for joining, everyone.
Hello, everyone. So my name is Victor. I work with applications in Tago for the last 5 years. So in this webinar, we will be talking about profiles, devices and payload parser, connectors, and tags, and how the tags architecture works with TagoIO. So first thing, let me introduce you to the agenda of this webinar. So I will start talking about the profiles here, then device and payload parser, next connector, device tags and the blueprint dashboard, user tags, and access management. Then I will go to a demo showing all this in the platform, showing some examples. And for last, we have the Q&A, where you can do some questions for us to answer. So first thing, we have the profiles. So once you have an account with on TagoIO, usually most of our customers want to have more than one person accessing this profile, just to be able to share the development structure, so other users can create devices, analysis, etc. So explaining a little bit how profile works. So it's equivalent to your sub account on Tago. So you can have more than one profile. You can use it to production environment or developer environment, or just have different applications on each profile, so they do not relate to devices, data from different profiles you have in your account. You can share with other developers from your company, or just your friends that is working with you. One important thing is that profile is not meant to be shared with customers. So if you have a customer that do not know how to code or how devices work, you do not want to share this with them. So next thing, I'll be talking about the device payload parser. So here we have a slide just showing how the structure works. So first, your device will be communicating with Tago through MQTT or LoRaWAN providers, or just the emulator and dashboard widgets. So any data that go to your device will go through the payload parser on your device or connector. I'll show you later. And after the payload parser normalize this data or decode the structure, it is when it will be stored to the buckets. That means if you want to just send a string or something to your device, you can use the payload parser to completely change what will be stored on Tago. So here we'll talk a little bit about the payload parser structure. So in the first image here, it's just an example, but this is basically how the payload parser is interpreted by Tago. So you have on the line 1, 2, 3 some package that is available to you to use inside the payload parser. One is Moment, the other is Day.js, and then we have the LoRa packet. You can use freely any of these packages inside your code. On the line 5, you can see we have something similar to a function on Node. So of course, this does not exist in your parser, but just for you to understand, every time the payload parser runs, it's like this a function that is running inside Tago, where you receive the payload and device parameters. And the payload is the most important parameter because you want to change this parameter to contain actually the results of your payload parser. So you can see at line 8 here. Let me get the pointer. So you can see at the line 8 here, we are actually changing the payload to filter the variables for this example here. And internally, what we do is that we return this payload and try to store it on the bucket. So after your payload parser runs, is when we will start to give errors for quality structure or something like that. So I have some points here. So everything goes to the payload parser when added into your device, no matter what is the source. You must and can modify the content of the payload. And here we have an example of the TagoIO JSON structure. This is the structure Tago needs to receive in order to accept your data. So you have an array with objects, a JSON object containing variable and value, also have units and some other keys on the JSON that you can send, like time, metadata, and others. I'll show you later in the demo. So once you have your payload parser done, what you want to do is to create a connector. So the connector is nothing more than abstraction of your payload parser. So you can create devices using this connector, and all the devices using this connector will run in the same payload parser or decoder, depending on your use case. So by using the connector, it will make easier for you to update the decoder for all the devices. So you don't need to go one by one, editing the code you have. Also make it easier to create new devices. And since the connector showing your device list, also make it easier for you to differentiate all the devices you have in your account. So in this slide here, this image, we can see how this structure works for TagoIO. So you have your devices and your payload. So here, example of an hexadecimal payload. It goes to the payload parser of the network. So TagoIO also have the network doing some parsing. The result of this parsing go to your connector, and then it will be stored in your bucket. And of course, you have additional step here for your own payload parser inside your device if you want to have one. So once you have your device working with Tago, the next thing you want to do is to start using the tags. So how the tags works? You will see this in the blueprint dashboards. You will see in the access management for users. So the architecture that TagoIO uses is heavily on how you are managing your tags. So by adding tags, let me to your users dashboard, device section, access rules. Almost every entity at Tago has tags for you to set on. You can, for example, automatize how will be the access for your users to your dashboard or your users to your device. So in this slide here, I have an example how the tags are set for the devices. It's the same on every entity, of course. So you have the key and the value. In this case, I have the key device type. It's just one key that I just enter it there. There's no limitation. And I have a value for this device type called sensor. Also, we use organization ID. Usually, you get these IDs from Tago itself, like device ID or a user ID, and also have a sensor type. You can duplicate, you can have the same key several times with different values or even with the same value. It's heavily dependent on your use case. So blueprint dashboards make use of these tags to show devices that you can select in the blueprint dashboard. So you can see here in this example that we have a tag key and a tag value called sensor. And all the devices that has this tag key and this tag value will show up as a drop down in the blueprint dashboard. So this makes easier for scaling up your application regarding dashboards. So you can have only one dashboard in your account and just change the device that is showing up for the widgets. Next thing, we have the access management. So access management also makes use of the tags. You can set up different kinds of user access. Let's say you have a supervisor, an end user, or you have even a technician. So by using tags is how you will set up the access for users in your application. So here I have an example for user management, access management, sorry. In this case, we are using tag match. What tag match means is that it will try to match the value for the tag, in this example here, organization ID and customer type. So by using the same tag here in customer type, both in the dashboard and for the rule for the user, what TagoIO will try to do is if the value for this tag in that user is the same as the value for this tag in the dashboard, the user automatically have access to that dashboard. Same thing here for the device, if it's a tag match for the organization ID in this case. So this is another way to scaling your application. By using tag match, you will also see that in some widgets, in the blueprint dashboard, etc. Because you will not be creating new access rules for every user you create in your application. So you just manage the tags and the user automatically have access to the correct entities that they should have. So regarding deploying applications, so the first step when you enter to Tago is to have your devices ready and working with the payload parser though. You also have you need to have dashboards to visualize the data from your devices. Next thing is to create your analysis, to automatize your application for creating devices automatically with given tags, or just to analyze data from your devices and get average values and other more complex logics, and also to set up your access management for your users to have the correct access on the correct entities of TagoIO. Once you have all this done, you can deploy your solution using TagoRUN. So TagoRUN will generate a new URL just for your customers to access your application. There you can set up a white label and a custom domain. You can have a sign up page, or you can sign up your users just for your use case. They will have access based on the access management you set up, and they also can have access to the mobile app to access your application. So now I will go to the demo showing how this is done inside TagoIO. Let me get the account here. So I have here an empty account, basically, and just one dashboard, one device, but I will be creating everything from the beginning. So starting when you first enter to your account of Tago, first thing you need to have is your devices working. So by clicking the devices button here, I can create a new device. We do have support to several networks, depending on what you will be using. One example here, we'll use Ethernet just to sample all this webinar. And I also have one brown device for leak detection. So TagoIO already have support to this device, so I can just come here and find my device for leak detection. Let's see which one. Oh, here. So we have a water leak. I could just use this connector. As I mentioned that previously, the connector is just the decoder. We don't have anything else. But in this case, I will create the support for this sensor, like if Tago do not has the support for it. So in this case, we have in all the networks this custom connector here. What this connector do is basically does not have any decoder on it. So I give it a name. And also, let me put my UI here so I can create my device. Okay, create my device. I also have authorization here to generate. So this is regarding how you integrate Ethernet with TagoIO. I will not be covering this in this webinar. You can check in the documentations. Every network has different steps, but all of them use the authorization that you need to generate in your account. Okay, so I have here my first device, custom Ethernet. So it does not have any decoder. I can come here to Live Inspector and press play to see any data that is being sent to this device. So if I use a dashboard to send data to the device, or even the emulator here that we'll cover later, it will show up here. So let's see, my device can communicate. Let me refresh the page here. Make sure I am connected correctly. Okay. So in the Live Inspector, we can see the example of everything that I just talked about in the payload parser. We have the route payload, that is what was sent to this device, the original information. I also have the LoRaWAN Ethernet payload parser. This is from Tago, it's not from Ethernet. So Tago is parsing and decoding and normalizing this information. So it will generate all these variables for me. And next thing, I have the parser from the custom Ethernet. So in this case, this decoder does nothing. So it's the same result from the LoRaWAN Ethernet payload parser. As you can see, this works as a cascade. So the result of the route payload goes to the LoRaWAN, the result of the LoRaWAN then goes to the connector. And then if I head here, I would also see the result of my device payload parser. So as you can see, I don't have the information on the leak, if it's leaking or not, and other information that Brown was sent here. I only have the payload information and the port. So I will talk about the payload parser now. Let me enable this for my device. I get a starting code here, so it's just for ignoring some variables. So in this case, if I ignore variables in the payload parse, these variables will not count for my data input limit. first thing I want to do here is show all of you how to debug and how to all the variables and context variables we have here for Payload parser.
Victor,
Go ahead.
can you explain a little bit in regards to the JSON accepted formats in our platform?
Oh, sure. So if I go here to emulator, I can load this basic sample. So this is the JSON format we have for Tago. So you need to make sure the result of our payload parser match this format here, because otherwise Tago will say that the data is not allowed or will throw some error. So basic information you need to send in this JSON format is the variable. So if I try to store this information just with the variable, it's accepted, no data added here. Other information like value is what will show up in your dashboards. You also have units that the widgets also understand for showing your data. You can also customize the date and time for your information, for your data. We also have the Siri here. So Siri works like a grouping feature on Tago. So if you send, let's say I have two information here, humidity and temperature. So if I have the same Siri on both data, I am assured that this information will be grouped when it goes to several widgets like image marker, line chart, map, etc. We also have this metadata. So this is, you can put anything you want here. It will be accepted. Let's say I just put user, let's say Victor here, this will work. And several widgets also use this metadata like color green here to show up information. So you need to check the documentation on each widget and what they accept in the metadata that will change how the user see this information. We also have the location. So location basically send latitude and longitude, and this is required for the map to work. Also, you can see more information on how this JSON structure by looking at our documentation here. Okay, going back to the payload parser. So we do have some context variables that we show here in the documentation. So we do have the payload for sure. As I mentioned, at the end, the payload content is what will be added to your device. We also have the device here. So let me do some console logs here for debugging. Just to show you the content of all these. We also have the route payload. So this is a very cool parameter. So even that you have LoRaWAN payload parser running here, custom running here, you can always access route payload to have access to the first payload that was sent for your device. So this is very useful in some cases when you are using LoRaWAN integrations and providers. We also have some packets of some libraries, and from here you can access the documentation on how to use these libraries. Also has console log, debug and error here, just for your debugging information. So the most used are payload and device. So let me show you how this works. So let me post the temperature and the payload, and we will see the logs inside our line inspector here. So you can see the first log that was my payload. So this is the correct payload I have. And the second one is the device. So from the device, I do have the device ID, the profile, the bucket, also my tags, if I have any tag, and all my configuration parameters are here as well. So this is how you access configuration parameters if you have one, or your tags if you also have. Um, so I will be showing here an example for LoRaWAN using the brown one. So first thing you want to do is to load the example for LoRaWAN. So we have here some inline codes, also some in-code documentation. So the code actually starts on the line 13. You can see we will be only running this payload parser if we really receive a variable called payload raw or payload or data. So this is support for all the integrations that we had in Tago, but usually all payload information for any LoRaWAN provider will arrive in this payload as an hexadecimal. So first thing we do on line 17 is to transform this hexadecimal to a buffer, and the buffer is just an array with information on each of your bytes. So let's say I have a byte like this. So you can, for example, access the first byte by accessing the first position of this array. So down here, you can see we are accessing our first byte by using some functions of the buffer. So let's say I want to read the int 8 or wint. If I have here to also use the wint. I do have DA and LE for little engine and big engine. So I can also access from the position 1 the next 16 bits or 2 bytes. More information regarding that you can find in the documentation within your own parser. So we have this in-depth guide for payload parser that will explain all the functions you can use. And we also do support bitwise here. So in this case, for brown, I can see for the Wither leakage status, I need to access bit 0. So I can just do a bitwise here to access bit 0 and see and receive the Wither leak status from my device. So I will do just that and save it. Next thing, we only have some information here in case our payload parser throws errors. So we print to the console and also create a variable called parse errors. So you can check later if you are not with the live inspector opened at the moment the error occurred. And in this case here for line 30, we are just adding Siri to all the variables that you are outputting from this payload parser and time to make sure all of them are with the same Siri and time. It can be grouped in all your widgets. So I come back here to live inspector. I can clean this and make my brown send the information. So now you can see you have the water leak status with value of 1. And next thing I want to talk about is about the types of values. So TagoIO do support strings. So for example, I can cast this information to a string. So in this case, TagoIO will interpret as this information as a text. And this is important because most widgets do handle different the information of your data based on the type of the value. So if it's a string, it will not work for a line chart. Basically, any chart will not understand strings. So you want to make sure your information is number. If you are sending temperature readings or humidity readings, something like that. We also have booleans. So I can use this syntax here from Node.js to transform this information that is always 1 or 0 to a 2 or false. So I can do the example here. So now I have a Boolean value. So next thing is about testing. So maybe you don't have the device in your hand right now, and you want to build your payload parser, but you do know how what is your payload, or you can just send data once, and you have the payload here, so you can copy this information. Now, go back to the emulator. If you want, you can get this lot once it plot sample. So you see it's send payload and part. I can enter my payload content here. I can also enter my part. I know it's 3. And now I can use the emulator to have my parsing working and basically do all my coding and start to use this. Okay, once you have the payload parser done, next thing you want to do is to create your first connector. So I have a TagoRUN and detector here. I will want to copy all this payload parser I just made. And then I can click on the corner here, and you will see this integrations option. You can click on that. So from here, you can create networks or connectors. I will create a connector for TagoRUN detection. Here I can select which networks this connector will work. Since I did a lot of parsing, if you use our example from the snippet that I just showed you, you can just select all the larger ones. That is sure that it will work for any of them. So I will create my connector. So I have name, description, device image, documentation if I want to fill it up. So in this case, it's a private connector. I don't want to make this public. If you want to make this public, you will need to fill all these fields. You can go to more here and ask to be public, and TagoIO will review for you and make it public if it met all our criteria. But in this case, I just want to have the name here and use the payload parser function of the connector. Okay, basically my connector is done. I can go back to my device. I will delete this old device I have here using the custom Ethernet connector. Let me delete this. I will add the new device. I can click here in my connectors to see all my connectors. So now you can see I have the TagoRUN leak detection I just created. I know it's Ethernet one. Just do it again, like I did in the beginning of the webinar. And now I'm using my connector. I don't have any payload parser here. I can turn on my live spectre now. And when my device sends data, I actually added in the water leak status from my connector. And it makes it just more easier if you have more devices created that will use the same payload parser, that you can just come back here in the integrations, select your connector and change your payload parser. It will apply for any device using this connector here. And of course, one more thing, you can always enable this and add another layer of payload parser just for this device if I want to. Okay, that's all regarding connectors and payload parser. I want to talk about the dashboards. That is the next thing you want to care about. After you have your devices working and sending data to Tago. So in this case, I will start with a blueprint dashboard. The normal dashboard is just straightforward. You select which device and which variable for that device you want to show for your widget. So because in the blueprint, it will have all that you have in the normal dashboards and some plus regarding the blueprints for scaling up your application. So I call this my first dashboard. So when you first set up your blueprint, it will ask you to create a blueprint device. So this is just a name for a group of devices that you will be able to select in your widgets. So let's say this is my sensor. I will need to enter a key and a tag value. So in this case, I will just create one key here called device type with tag value of sensor. It can be anything you want. I'm just using this as an example. Okay, so you can see we do not have any device here for us to select because our device do not have any tag yet. So I will go back here to device, select my first device, and now I can go here to the tags, enter the device type tag with value sensor. And if I go back to the dashboard, it will automatically get my only one device that has that tag. I also have another device here, or I can just create a new one. So let's do that. I will add any UI here just for identification. Go back to tags, select my device type tag, enter my value sensor. Now, if I go back to the dashboard, you will see you have actually the two devices to select from here. So I will create just a very simple widget, the display widget. I can select the blueprint device. So any device that is on the sensor will show up here. I can enter my variable here, so it will not show the variables that is in the device for you to easily select because the blueprint dashboard does not know what variables we have. Let me just get back here to see which variable I entered yet, what release status and create. So if I select device 1, it will say true. In the device 2, I don't have any data, so no data available. So this is how the blueprint dashboards work. So some clues about the blueprint dashboards. I'm going to edit this dashboard here. I go to the blueprint settings. We can also have an icon for this dashboard, of course. So from here, you also have these filter conditions. So if I have two types of blueprint sensor, let's say I have a customer here. And of course, this means my application will have devices for customers. And it's very common to do that in your applications. You can have dummy device for customers using just the HTTPS custom connector. This dummy device is just to store information for the customers because one of the first things you need to know is that in order for your customers to see anything regarding entities, they need to have you need to have a device to show that on a dashboard. So let's say I have a device type here called customer. I can actually tag match all the sensors that will be showing for this blueprint device based on what was selected in this second device here. So by clicking this filter condition, I can say that if the customer blueprint device has a tag match with, let's say here, customer ID, for example. So what was selected in the customer will filter all the devices that will show up for the sensor. Another thing we can do is to hide this drop down when there is no more than one device, which is very useful when we start to talk about the run. And we can also give alias names for these blueprint devices on the drop down. So you can see it's all hiding here. Let me just enable quick clicker again. So we have a customer, no option, no option. So let me create a device here. I can use the setting. It's already a dummy device, so HTTPS. I will enter a device type here called customer. Also enter a user ID here. Let's say just 12. Go back to my device 1 and add the user ID here. The same one that is from the other device. So if I go back to the dashboard, you can still have settings here. Did I use? Let me check. I have user ID on both is 12. Let me check if I did set up this correct. User ID, I put customer ID. Okay, so when I select settings, it show up the device for me to select. If I had another device here or a different user ID, let's say I change this to 14, and I have the other device, the device 2 here with the same tag 14. So it will change the sensor I can select for that drop down. So and this way you can start to create breadcrumbs here where you select one device, then you have a different option for the second device, third device, fourth device, and forward. So this is regarding the tags and the blueprint dashboard. I just want to talk quickly about the access and the users. So let me change the tag here, 14. Okay, so it should have both devices here to select. So when you want to distribute your application, you want to have the run enabled. So it once you press save here, it will generate URL for you. You also have the title, subtitle. You can change here and see it's changing in the screenshot there immediately. You can also change your domain. So here's my application. I can say this is my tracking application, for example. So it will change your URL here. You can also go to your profile settings and enable a custom domain, so you can use your own domain instead of run.tago.io. So let's save here to change my URL. So if I go to this URL, I will have access to the sign in, and if I had the sign up for my application. So my username and password from Tago will not work here. The only users that will work here is the users from my profile. So I have 2 users here. I can click on them. I can create new ones, of course, directly from here. So enter name, password, time zone, etc. for them. So I can also click here on my user and press this button to log in as the user. So we'll log into my application for that user. You can see we have a button here that is going to run. In the sidebar, you can customize and create a button. So I will select for that button my first dashboard, save it. So if I go back to my user, you can see we do not have access to this dashboard. So your customer do not have any access unless you create the access rules here. So I'll go back to the access management. I have some policies already created. Let me create a new one. So my customer policy. So from here, I can select what are the targets of this policy. I can do by ID, so I can select my customer here, which should be very quick and easy. I can do by tags, so I enter the tag value, the tag key and tag value. So all the users with this given tag key and tag value will have the permissions I will set up later. or I can do the tag match. So the tag match is what you scale. So you want to be using that unless you have specific targets for tags. So for example, I will give access to my users on my dashboard using the tag match. So I can say that all the users with customer type tag that match the same value for my dashboard. And I can create my permission here, select dashboard for my type of permission, access for my rules, and tag match for which field. So I'll be using customer type for my field here. I can also give access to devices. So I can use the device. I can create another tag match rule and use the user ID that I just created later for my devices. So all my users that has the tag user ID that match the same value here, we have access for the devices. So this is how you set up your policies. I'll press create. Now I want to go back to my dashboard and create that tag customer type. Let's say it's user. Also want to go to my user tests and create the tags customer type user and also the user ID so they can have access to the devices for key. Now if I go back here to my user in my application, you can see I now have access to the dashboard. I also do have access to the devices. So if I do not give them access to the device, let's say I change my user ID here, they will have access to the dashboard, but cannot see any device, as you can see here now. Okay, that's all about this webinar. So we covered all the basic you need to know in order to start creating your application, scaling up the application. On the next webinar, I want to talk how you can automatize all these information. So you want to create devices automatically or create a device from a dashboard. We'll be talking about analysis, the actions, and start to have some automatically functions inside your application. So you don't need to do all this tag setup and other things manually as I did now in this presentation. Thiago?
Great presentation. Thank you, Victor. I think this was essential, not just for new users, but existing users as well. It's great to explain the structure of the system. And we will jump now to some questions. We have a question from Dandy. He asked, hi, I have a question. If we have a panic button sensor that shows 1 equals to push and 0 equals to not push, according to you, which is more efficient? Give the logic on a payload parser or give the logic on the dashboard settings?
Well, it heavily depends on your application to say that. So you can have in the payload parser. Usually, when you go to the dashboards, you want to have information like 1 and 0. So you can, for example, let me go here to my first dashboard. So I have a tool here. I can easily use the, if you click here to have more options for this variable, you will have the formula. So you can change here the information. So let's say it's true. I can say it's on or off, for example, let's say. So now it's on because it's true. So this is one way to change without having strings in your payload parser. But if you think this will not be a problem, if you think it will not make hard for you to create actions or analysis later, you can go to your payload parser and just change the information sending. So let's say it's true or false. You can do a quick lambda function here. Just say leaking or not leaking. But as also it will make hard for you to create actions later. So uh, take care when you use this way of sending information to our devices.
Great, thank you, Victor. Dandy, I hope that answers your question. I'll give a couple more seconds if anybody has any questions. Just a reminder, guys, this is part one. We're gonna have part two also coming up on the 29th, same times, which is gonna be a little bit more technical. We're gonna be using analysis, and I hope everybody joins. I'm gonna be providing a link later together with this video, which we're recording. And anybody has any questions or concerns? All right, very good. I would like to thank everybody that joined our webinar today. I hope it truly helped you. If you're a new user, existing user, I hope to see everybody on the next webinar. Everybody have a great one. Thank you.